Okay, so in the past, you've probably been taught to solve equations like these. So for that example off to the right, you've probably been taught, instead of doing the method I'm going to teach you, to subtract 5, 6 from both sides. When you have to find a common denominator, change both fractions. So they have that common denominator, and then once you do that, you actually have to do the subtracting, and then you have to multiply both sides by the reciprocal 1/4. It's really time-consuming, and there's a lot to it. I'm going to show you today how you can solve an equation with fractional coefficients by multiplying both sides by the least common denominator. So this paragraph says you can solve an equation with fractional coefficients by using the least common denominator of all the fractions in the equation. Once you find the least common denominator, you're going to multiply everything by that number, and all of the denominators will cancel out, so you have no fractions left. So in this example, my denominators were 4, 6, and 12. The least common denominator was 12. So if I multiply that whole equation by 12, it's like the distributive property. You distribute the 12 to the 1/4 c, to the 5/6, and to the 1/12, which is what they do down here. When you do that, your denominators will cancel out. So that first term, the 4 will cancel out and you're left with 3c. The second term, the 6 will cancel out and you're left with 2 times 5, which gives you 10. And it's equal to 12 times 1/12 gives you that 1. Okay, so I have 6 examples for you. So split your paper into 6 boxes. Okay, first example. 6. If I have n over 3 plus n over 4 equals 7. First thing you need to do is you need to figure out what your least common denominator is between all of your fractions. So I have a 3 as a denominator. I have a 4 as a denominator. On the right side of the equal sign, I don't even have a fraction. But what is the denominator under 7? A 1. Okay, so between 3, 4, and 1, what is my least common multiple? 12. So I'm going to multiply the entire equation by 12. When I do this, I have to distribute that 12 to everything that is included in that equation. So I'm going to take 12 times n over 3 plus 12 times n over 4 plus 12 times 7. So then if I look at my terms one by one, I'm going to go ahead and write that 12 over 1. And if you look at something that will cross-reduce, in that first term, I can divide out a 3. So the 3 becomes a 1, the 12 becomes a 4. And I get 4 times n, which is 4n. Notice my denominator is 1 times 1, which is just 1. So I don't have a denominator anymore. My second term, I can divide out a 4. So you should get 3n. And on the right side, 12 times 7 gives me 84. Notice I have no fractions left. All my fractions are gone. And now you can solve this equation. 4n plus 3n gives me 7n. And if I divide both sides by 7, I get n equals 12.
Wait, no, I'm not done.
All right, let's look at 4x over 8 minus x over 6 equals 1 over 12. The first thing you're going to do on all of these problems is find your least common denominator. So between 8, 6, and 12, what is the least common denominator? 24. So you're going to multiply the entire equation by 24. And I'm going to take each individual piece and multiply it by 24. So I have 24 times 4x over 8. Now since this is a subtraction, I have to subtract 24 times x over 6. And that is equal to 24 times 1 over 12. Once you do that step, you can take each individual piece and simplify it. So that first term, I can divide out an 8. So the 24 turns into a 3. I get 3 times 4x gives me 12x. My second term, I can divide out a 6. I get 4 times x. This gives me a minus 4x. And on the right side of the equal sign, I can divide out a 12. So the 24 turns into a 2. 2 times 1 just gives me 2. Okay, well, 12x minus 4x is 8x. And to solve for x, you would divide both sides by 8. So simplified, what would your answer be?
1/4.
1/4. Let's do one more together, and then I'll give you guys one to try out on your own. If I have hold on, backtrack. Let's do x plus 1 over 3 minus x plus 2 over 4 equals 1/2. What is my least common denominator between all of my fractions? 12. I'm going to take each individual piece, multiply it by 12. I am really going to recommend don't skip steps. Make sure you're writing this step out. So I have 12 over 1 times x plus 1 over 3. Then I'm going to subtract 12 over 1 times x plus 2 over 4. And on the right hand side, I have 12 over 1 times 1 over 2. Now you need to be really, really careful. Like yesterday, whenever we were talking about our cross products, in that first term, when I divide out a 3, the 12 turns into a 4. So I have 4 times the quantity x plus 1. You have to carry down those parentheses. Then I have a minus. The 4's cancel out. I'm left with a minus 3 times x plus 2. Once again, carrying down the parentheses. And on the right-hand side, I can divide out a 2. So it equals 6. You have to be extra super careful on this part as well, because I need to go ahead and distribute out both of these numbers. So I get 4x plus 4, but you have to be really careful because this is a negative 3. So when you distribute a negative 3, you get a minus 3x minus 6. And now we can combine like terms. What is 4x minus 3x? Just x. And 4 minus 6 minus 2. And it is equal to 6. So x equals 8. I want you guys to try a minus 2 over 4 minus a over 3 equals a negative 2/5. It's an A. You should have ended up with a negative 6/5. So whenever you multiply both sides or the entire equation by your least common denominator, it should have been 60. In your first term, you should have been able to divide out a 4. And you're left with 15 times a minus 2. Your second term, you can divide out a 3, and you're left with a minus 20a. And it is equal to, you should have got negative 24. When you distribute out the 15, you get 15a minus 30 minus 20a equals negative 24. You can combine your a's together, add 30 to both sides, and you should have ended up with negative 6/5. Yes, Ethan.
Hold on.
Okay, we'll do one more of these, and then I have one word problem for you, and then I'll let you get started on your homework. So, one more of these ones. Let's do 2y minus y over 2 equals y over 3 minus 7. This one's just a little different, but you do it the same way because I have fractions on both sides of the equal sign. I'm still looking for the least common denominator between all of my fractions. So what would I multiply this equation by? A 6. So this time I'm taking 6 times 2y minus 6 times y over 2. And that is equal to 6 times y over 3 minus 6 times 7. And when you simplify each piece, 6 times 2y gives you 12y. My second term I can divide out of 2. You get minus 3y. On the other side of the equal sign I can divide out of 3. You get 2y minus 6 times 7 gives you 42. I have y's on both sides of the equal sign, but before I get them all on one side, I have 12y minus 3y, which gives me 9y, equals 2y minus 42. And now if I subtract 2y from both sides, I get 7y equals negative 42. So y equals negative 6. All right, I want to solve 1/3 of a number is 4 more than 1/5 of the number. So I need to translate this into an equation, and then I can solve it. So take it piece by piece. 1/3 of a number. How would you write 1/3 of a number? 1/3 times x times a. It really doesn't matter. Is, what does is mean? Equals 4 more than. What does 4 more than look like? 4 plus. And 1/5 of the number. What does 1/5 of the number look like? 1/5 x. You have to use the same variable because it's the same number. And quickly, if we solve this, what would the least common denominator be? 15. So I take 15 over 1 times 1 over 3x equals 15 times 4 plus 15 times 1 over 5x. I can divide out of 3, so I get 5x equals 15 times 4 gives me 60. I can divide out of 5. And you can divide out of 5. So we get a plus 3x. When you solve this, subtract 3x from both sides. You get 2x equals 60, so x equals 30.